Hello. First of all, I'd just like to explain the title a little and whether it translates appropriately. This is sexting is the area I've worked in since about 2008. So the team self-generation of indecent images and exchanging of those images, and the fallout that happens as a result of it. One of the interesting things I find working in this area, and I don't know how many of you are parents in the audience today, but everybody, whether I'm talking to judges, or police, or teachers, or social workers, or NGOs, will default to parent when I start talking about this sort of work, saying, well, there's no way my child will do that, and on the whole, I agree. It's not something that lots and lots and lots of teenagers are doing, but it's something that lots and lots of teenagers are aware of. I have two children myself, 13 and 14, and I was driving my daughter to school a while back, and she was talking to me about my work, and we talked quite a lot about my work. And she just went, why do you call it sexting anyway? I said, well, what do you mean? That's what it is, isn't it? She went, no, it's nudes and dick pics. So this is a 13-year-old girl who, she's a very sensible, very down-to-earth 13-year-old girl. She went, only people over 40 call it sexting. Which again made me feel incredibly old and incredibly out of touch with what children talk about. But yeah, it's an interesting thing, and what I want to talk about really today is not the phenomena or specifically the behaviours, but the context around it. I think what Cassia said earlier about if we need to solve the problem, we need to understand the problem, is absolutely classic in this situation. I have lost count of the number of politicians I've met who will say to me, how can we stop teenagers sexting? And I laugh and say, you can't. And they're very disappointed because that doesn't really fit with a nice clear policy perspective on stopping things happening. And I don't know if any of you are aware of the policy in the UK in this area, but basically most of the approaches in the UK in this area will stop young people doing that then, whether it's cyberbullying, looking up pornography, sexting, or any of the other things as well. Now, if you want to try and stop a determined 14-year-old boy looking at pornography, I wish you good luck, because I'm sure that will never happen. I was told by a 14-year-old boy a while ago, because I said I was going to the House of Lords the next day, and I said, well, what should I tell them about this porn blocking they're talking about? And he said, take all the pornography in the world and bury it in a field, and I'd still find it. So I think it's a very honest reflection there of the fact that if you have a determined teenager who wants to access this sort of thing, they will find solutions. And I think prohibitive approaches are very, very problematic and very dangerous as well, because what they do then is stopping us having conversations. The current work I'm doing with teenagers around nudes and dick pics rather than sexting, I don't want to sound old here, is very much around, all right, what can we do? And the one thing they say more than anything else when they say what can adults do to help in this area is listen. They say we never get listened to. We get judged, we get told off, we get told it's illegal, and I'll talk about legalities in a little while as well, but we don't get listened to and we don't get a chance to ask questions. Which actually is probably the favourite part of my job. I do various things in my job. I write, I talk to policymakers in this area, but I also spend quite a lot of time sat in rooms with small groups of young people talking about how certain types of online activities affect their lives. And that is by far the best part of my job. Because even if we are talking about something difficult, and I'll give you some examples as we go through, where you do sometimes encounter some problematic behaviours, at the end of it, invariably they'll say, we've never spoken to an adult about this before. And I don't think what I do is very unique. I don't think I'm in some way special, and children will talk to me and they won't talk to anyone else. But it's just the fact that if you sit there and listen, you get far more than if you just say, well, you know, if you self-generate a decent image, you've broken the law. Which is a very, you know, if you give it a classic scenario, so you say take a 14-year-old girl who, as a result of pressure from a 14-year-old boy, has self-generated a decent image. They've fallen out in some way, and as a result of that falling out, that boy has then sent that image around to everybody in their school year. and as a result of that, the girl is being victimised and bullied and abused. And she goes to a teacher and says to the teacher, I'm being bullied and victimised and abused, and it's really upsetting me at the moment. Probably the last thing she wants to hear is, well, you shouldn't have done that, should you? And you've broken the law. And I think that's a really, really concerning thing. And I know Maggie mentioned earlier on a case that was made in the UK press recently, of a 12-year-old whose mother would say, well, you know, she has broken the law by the letter of the law there, and we might have to prosecute. A vulnerable 12-year-old who was groomed by a predator is then being told that they've broken the law and they might be being prosecuted. Ends up in an environment where children aren't going to be willing to disclose to us the sorts of things that happen. Because one of the other things I hear so much from young people is, oh, once it's online, you can't do anything about it. I think, well, where's that message? Well, that message has come from education. That message has come from teachers saying, oh, well, you know, you shouldn't do it. And if that, you know, I mean, my son came home the other day, and I hope you appreciate the translation of the term. He said, oh, we did something on digital footprint today. I said, oh, what was that then, mate? He said, oh, it's complete bollocks. This is a 14-year-old boy. I said, well, what do you mean it's complete bollocks? He said, well, all I said was, you know, if you call your friend a moron on Instagram, then in 10 years' time your employer will sack you because you posted something on Instagram 10 years ago. I went, seriously, are they still telling you that sort of thing? So I suggested that he go back to his teacher the next day, talk about the GDPR and the right to be forgotten. So he wrote it down. It must be terrible having me as a dad when they go back into school. Well, my dad said that's nonsense. But anyway, so that's the context, and hopefully news, dick pics, and here abuse translates effectively. But if someone was to ask me, what is my research? What is it I do? Because again, if you were to ask my son what I do, he would tell you that I talk to teenagers about pornography. That's what my son understands as my job. Or talks to teenagers about sexting, which is probably even worse. But what I really look at is how technology legitimizes behaviours and changes behaviours. If I was doing this presentation 20 years ago, it's very unlikely I'd be talking about self-generation of indecent images and sharing them amongst peers and all that as a result of it. When I was younger, we did have these things called Polaroid cameras. I don't know if any of you remember the Polaroid camera. You take a picture, the photograph comes out the bottom and you develop it. That was the way of self-generating or couples generating indecent images a few years ago. But it's extremely difficult to make 200 copies of a Polaroid image. It's extremely easy to make 200 copies of a digital image. And that's one of the things that has changed and has evolved over the years. When I first started looking at sexting back in 2008, we were told there's no way we can talk to young people about this sort of thing. It's too risky. It's too provocative. It might encourage them to do it, we were told. So we worked with one school to trial a survey because we were basically told there's no way you can talk to children about this, but you might be able to survey them. So we trialled with one school a survey, and we spoke to some young people in that school and said, we'd like to do a survey about sexting. And one of the girls went, what's sexting? So we said, well, it's the self-generation of these things. She went, oh yeah, that happens all the time. And we went, oh, what, sorry? And the teacher went, sorry? She went, oh, not everyone doing it, but there's normally a nude flying around the school. And the teachers were, really? I'm amazed. But what has changed? What is it that's changed? Is it, as policymakers would wishes to believe, this is all the internet's fault and the fault of Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat and all those things? Or is there something else that's changed in terms of what does the technology do to change our own behaviours? And that's very much where I want to focus the talk today. Maggie's already spoken about public opinion, and I find public opinion in this area very, very interesting and sometimes very, very concerning. And I'd like to give you a quick example of this. I don't know whether any of you are aware of the former CEOP head in the UK, a man called Jim Gamble, who, if I was being kind, I'd say he doesn't get as much press as he used to. So he seems to say more and more provocative things in the press to make sure that the press gives him coverage. And this was a story that was only covered in the UK tabloid newspaper, The Sun. I don't know if you're aware of the UK media, but it's pretty crap. I'm one of the time. And he said in this, what we need is an army of paedophile hunters, an army of amateur paedophile hunters that will connect to people who've got a sexual interest in children and coerce them into meeting up with them, where they can be then arrested by the police and prosecuted. Now, this is a growing trend in the UK. There was a BBC report that came out a couple of days ago saying about 40% of cases where people have been grooming children have led to arrest. About 40% of them have had an element of online paedophile hunters in them. So you might sort of sit there and go, well, actually, if someone's going to engage in a conversation with someone they know as a child in a sexual way, they've got it coming to them, haven't they? Then you think, what's the public reaction going to be to this sort of thing? And this was the first comment on the website where that story broke. I'm not going to go into it in massive detail, but effectively, Ultimate Jedi Master, I'm not sure that's his real name, but it might be his real name, said that, well, these people should be violently assaulted. And these people should maybe have their heads smashed up with big axes, and then they should be given massive medals as a result of what they do. This is a very clear scenario. If someone has a sexual interest in a child, someone thinks they're grooming each other, and we should violently assault them. But it becomes more difficult and more problematic then we say, well, what happens when the person who's doing the grooming is someone with learning difficulties? Or what happens if the person who's doing the grooming is a 14-year-old boy? And on a number of occasions we have had cases in the UK where online paedophile hunters have gone to meet someone and it turns out to be a child themselves. Then it starts to become more difficult. And then they say, oh, let's let anyone who fancies pretending to be a child online to catch these disgusting perverts, it starts to become more difficult. It starts to become more problematic. And that's kind of where I come from with my work. And while sexting is one of the phenomena I look for, I want to look at the broader culture around it, because, as Cassie was saying earlier, if we don't understand the problem, we're never going to move forward with it. One of the really interesting things about the work I'm doing at the moment, so this is 2017 now, I first started doing focus group work with young people in this area back in 2012. I'll talk about it a little bit more in a while. But the attitudes in 2017 are exactly the same as the attitudes in 2012 by young people. So even though, I work with the UK Safer Internet Centre an awful lot myself, even though we've had all these initiatives over the years, we've had education strategies, we've had new policy, we have in the UK now compulsory sex relations education in schools, it's not impacting on young people's attitudes. Because all we're doing is going, hey kids, don't sex. Hey kids, don't cyberbully. If it goes online, it stays online. And those conversations really do have to move on. Because this comment here, she had it coming to her, is something that I've heard so much from young people that is quite depressing. So just to talk about legitimisation for a moment, a nice little example here, a very, very funny piece of a conversation I had with a 14-year-old boy in a focus group about 2 months ago. Boys are interesting in this area. They will happily, openly talk about the fact that, dick pics go around the schools. This did not happen when I was 14. I don't know if anyone is young enough to go, oh yeah, it happened in my school. But, and one of them was saying, oh, well, sometimes we'll have a picture on each of our phones and we'll compare sizes and things. What? You go, would you sit in the locker room after sports and say that? No. And it looks to me as if it was a ridiculous thing to say. So, what's different there? And I start to unpick it, and I just came out with this question, saying, well, why do you think boys send dick pics and this that? Oh, to get a new back off a girl. Does it ever work? No. And you go, so why are you doing that? Because it works for someone. I know someone in year 10, year 11, and it worked for them. So eventually it might work. So is it worth doing? And essentially what these boys are doing is self-disclosing the fact they have generated indecent images of themselves and send it to somebody. Not necessarily just one person as well. When my son was 13, I was asked to do an assembly at his school. And I said, I've been asked to do an assembly for your year, mate. I probably shouldn't talk about sexting, should I? Because it's a bit young to be talking about sexting. And he was eating his breakfast at the time. He went, no, there was a boy in my year who took a picture of his dick at the weekend, sent it to 2 girls. I went, why 2? He went, I thought one of them might say yes. But playing the odds there. Well, essentially what this boils down to is these young people are trying to establish relationships. And it's interesting, even when I'm talking to children of primary age, sort of 9, 10, 11, within about 10 minutes of talking to them, they'll start to tell me, I've got a girlfriend, or I've got a boyfriend. Because that's important, because that means you're attractive, and that means you're popular if you have a girlfriend or a boyfriend. And this is the sorts of thing they're doing. The reason they are engaging in these behaviours isn't because they want to do sexting, it's because they want to form a relationship. And if you've not had decent relationships education over the years, maybe you'll think this is the way you go about it. Because let's face it, adults do it as well. We have a wonderful example in the UK of a former MP who accidentally sent a photograph of himself naked to a journalist from one of our tabloid newspapers because he thought it was somebody else. The reason he thought it was somebody else because her profile picture on WhatsApp was actually a very attractive young lady. It turned out to be a male journalist from the Daily Mirror. If you want to go online, you can actually still find this image. It's a hilarious image. But when politicians are talking about the behaviour of young people, this doesn't stop at 18. We don't suddenly all become very responsible and mature at 18 because we want to know we're attractive and we want to know that we're popular and similar. But where's the blame for this? It's interesting that popular and the broadcast media want it to be known that it's the internet's fault this happens. Because, I don't know, do you have X Factor and those sorts of shows over here? Sort of. Popularity shows. And in the early rounds of these shows, you get people who are essentially emotionally vulnerable going on, and we all laugh at them and go, oh, look, this person can't dance and this person can't sing. And let's record it and stick it on YouTube so everyone else can say nasty things about them as well. That's popular mainstream media there. That's not the internet doing this sort of thing. Yes, the prevalence of hardcore pornography is a challenge, and it's a very difficult one to address. And we don't really know the long-term impact of this because we haven't been around long enough to see it. But it's not just the internet that does this sort of thing. We had a case in the UK a couple of years ago of quite a famous footballer called Adam Johnson. And Adam Johnson met a 15-year-old girl at a nightclub, and then they exchanged phone numbers. And over a period of time, he sent her increasingly sexually explicit messages. And then he met up with her one day and he sexually assaulted her. At no time did she say anything other than the fact she was 15. He was arrested. She went to the police. He was arrested. He was charged. This was the day he was sentenced on Sky News. And a couple of comments from the Facebook posts really do reflect some public attitudes on this. Again, there's an awful lot of slang in that first one, but basically this guy is saying that this girl is obviously sexually active, so what's the problem? And the second comment is basically saying she was nearly at the age of consent, so that's okay. Now, I use these examples in lectures, and in a lecture I gave recently, so this is to students around 18, 19, 20, a voice from the audience said when I was running through this piece, yeah, come on, she did have it coming to her, didn't she? Would anyone like to guess the gender of the person that said that? It was female that said that, female student that said that. So I said to her, as far as I'm concerned, this is an adult who's just sexually assaulted a child. It's very clear as far as I'm concerned. Why is it ambiguous to you? Oh, well, she shouldn't have gone to a nightclub, should she? In our case, it was her fault because she went to a nightclub and met an adult who groomed her and sexually assaulted her. Oh, you make it sound really bad, was a response to that. So it is really bad. An adult male sexually assaulted a 15-year-old girl. So, yeah, but she was 15. So, at what age do you find it socially unacceptable to sexually assault a child then? And apparently, at that stage, she got quite upset with me. And someone else said, interestingly, someone else in the lecture then said, this is making me feel really uncomfortable, can we move on? Which I thought was a really interesting comment. Because it's kind of like, oh, if we challenge these social norms that are facilitated by social media, so if you look at the Andy Mansfield comment, there's over 1,500 people that like that comment. That has legitimised his view. He said she's a sexually active 15-year-old, and over 1,500 people have gone, yeah, you're right. The Steubenville case in the US is a very famous one with very similar outcomes. These were two college football stars in the US who found a 16-year-old girl unconscious at a party, so they sexually assaulted her and took photographs of her sexual assault and posted them online, to a point that one of their peers said, "Guys, I think what you're doing is illegal." She woke up, saw the pictures, reported it to the police, they were arrested, they were charged. There were two college football stars there. They had promising sporting careers ahead of them. Twitter went crazy. Well, who's going to charge her for being drunk then? You know, I love that one there. Oh, I feel sorry for those two guys. They only did what most people would do. I don't know about anyone else in the audience, but if I see a 16-year-old girl unconscious at a party, I probably think I better look after her, make sure she's not sick, like, you know, not, oh, I think I might sexually assault her. Am I weird to think that? I don't know. And you might be saying, but this is Twitter. Twitter is full of hate and bile and judgment. And then you look at the CNN reporting on the same case. All of the focus is on the offenders and what a shame it was that their sporting careers have been ruined by this one mistake. And you reflect on that. And I talked about these cases with young people an awful lot. One thing that, because I've sort of done the celebrity in the UK, I've done the international story. This was a story in my hometown of Plymouth, where one 14-year-old boy split up with his girlfriend, and he accidentally sent his friend an indecent image of her. Now, I'm not one to judge. I'm sure he did accidentally send that image. He didn't do it deliberately at all, because I'm sure we all get accidentally sent images of people all the time. But his friend got back to him and said, "That's great, you got any more?" So he said, "Yes, I've got 78, you can have them for £10. So he sold 78 indecent images of a 14-year-old girl to his friend. Now, we have talked a great deal about how we don't want to criminalise children, and we don't want to talk about the fact they're breaking the law. However, if we are showing clear signs of coercion or exploitation, and I think selling images of your ex-girlfriend is probably clear exploitation of your ex-girlfriend, I'm perfectly comfortable with them being charged for that sort of thing. Now, these two people ended up with referrals, which is one step away from a custodial sentence. The responses, again, at the time, on social media, were, well, who's going to charge her for taking those images in the first place? Again, one of the comments was, those boys' lives have been ruined because she took those photographs. I'm not sure that their lives have been ruined because she took the photographs. I would suggest their lives have been ruined because one of them decided to make £10 out of the fact that she took those photographs. But when I talk to because I use all of these cases with young people, because it's always very good to now, I've never ever gone into a class and said, "Hands up who's sexed," because hopefully I'll be kicked out of school if I do that sort of thing. But equally, you can talk about these things in a broader context and they will respond to that broader context. One of the things I find most challenging and most upsetting is most of the time no one will empathise with the victim. The number of times it's, oh, well, you know, she should have come into it. When we talk about the Steubenville case, I had girls in the past say to me, "Yeah, but you shouldn't get drunk at parties, should you? Because that sort of thing can happen." Which is really worrying when you're hearing that from a 14-year-old girl. Because if something like that does happen in the future, her friend will go, "Oh, well, don't go telling anyone because, you know, you shouldn't have got drunk." One of the other things I find really interesting, and this is where it becomes very complex as far as peer-on-peer abuse is concerned, is if you've got a victim who doesn't realise they're a victim, but equally you have an offender who doesn't realise they're an offender, you have a very complex situation. I'll come back to that in a little while. But I think probably the most interesting thing from my perspective is the amount of apathy. Oh yeah, you know, my son eating his breakfast. Yeah, so-and-so took a picture of his dick, sent it to 2 girls at the weekend. This is normal. It's not to say that everybody's doing it, but they are exposed to those behaviours. Increasingly, we always see this with online digital behaviours. They start off in late teens, and then the behaviours trickle down. Increasingly, over the last 6 months or so, I've been in a number of primary schools, so that's up to 11, where someone normally rather embarrassingly takes me to one side and goes, "We have had a sexting incident here." And I go, Yeah, okay, but I've heard lots of other schools where this happens as well. One school I do a lot of work with, and he'd say there were two 11-year-olds, they were in a relationship, and one of them took a picture of his genitals and sent it to the girl. And then the girl told the mum, and the mum came into the school. And the school were absolutely distraught about it, saying, this is terrible. 11 years old, and they're doing these sorts of things. So I did say, you don't do sex education at this school, do you? I said, no, we do a couple of hours of reproduction, but that's all. So why do these young people not know that this is normal behaviour? Like, how have they not known? Maybe one of them's got an older brother or sister who's done this sort of thing and is in a successful relationship as a result of it. Why wouldn't they do these sorts of things if we don't give them the knowledge and the tools to address these sorts of things? But rather than saying children as young as saying children as young as 7 caught sexting, rather than saying schools are failing children by not providing decent relations education. Because, this is terrible, we've never had this before. The other side, if you have a legitimisation behaviour, you also see, I've talked quite a lot already about normalisation. This very small comment here, popular girls don't sex, was taken from a 14-year-old boy in a school where I was doing some work 3 or 4 years ago now. The number of times I've been into a school, a head teacher or one of the senior team will go, we've had a sexting incident, not the sort of young person you'd expect to do this sort of thing. So what do you mean by not the sort of young person? Well, one of the quiet ones, not very popular, quite withdrawn already. Well, that's exactly the sort of young person I would expect to do this sort of thing. This boy, this 14-year-old boy, came up with this saying, well, popular girls don't sex, do they? I said, well, why? They don't need to. They've already got boyfriends. But what a really interesting comment, what a very wise comment from a 14-year-old boy to say. We do this because we want to be in relationships. But in terms of the normalisation of it, this is a quote from a 20-year-old female who I interviewed a few years ago for a piece of work on digital risks in the workplace. I find this quote really, really, really problematic. It worries me a great deal. The word I take most exception to here is flirted. They flirted. It was a jokey behaviour. They sent me a picture of their genitals on their phone to have a laugh. Really? Because it sounds to me like she's regularly sexually harassed at work. But she's legitimising that herself by saying, if these gentlemen were going into her office and dropping their trousers, like in front of her, would she be saying, can you not flirt with me, please? I'm trying to work. I would hope she'd say, I'm going to the police, that's indecent exposure. Interestingly, in the UK at the moment, if you do take a photograph of your genitals on a digital device and show it to somebody, that isn't indecent exposure. We're having some interesting challenges in case law around that at the moment. So, if you actually physically get your member out, that is indecent exposure. You take a photograph of it just because there's no physical exposure, that's not. Sometimes legislation has to catch up with where we are. But this is essentially it. Someone who's possibly in their first job, regularly subjected to sexual harassment, can't see anything wrong with it because it's being delivered via a mobile phone. Now this is a comment from a 14-year-old girl. I was talking to her about WhatsApp, and she said, WhatsApp's quite good because you can block people on it. Well, how many people do you block on it? She said, I've blocked about 30 boys in my year. I said, 30? Why is that? Dick pics. How do you mean dick pics? Just send me dick pics all the time. Said, don't you think that's odd? She said, not really. Well, would they come into class and drop their trousers and go, what do you think of this? And she went, you silly. So it's the craziest thing in the world. So why is it different on the phone? She came up with this comment, it's like a shield. It protects you. You don't see the impact of your actions, and it protects you from the impact of other people's. Having it on a mobile device. One of the things we do talk about quite a lot in terms of online interaction is the removal of empathy. If I was to see Tony this morning and go, Tony, I think your shirt is a horrible colour, Tony would look sad, and I'd feel bad because I said something nasty to Tony. If I go on Twitter and tweet, saw Tony today, he's got a ridiculous coloured shirt, and 3 or 4 people like my comment, all of a sudden, I'm not nasty, I'm an internet legend. Look, 3 or 4 people have legitimised my behaviour. Yeah, let's all stick it to Tony. think your shirt's lovely, by the way, Tony. I think it's really nice. All right? I'm not being nasty to you. But we do lose empathy because we don't see the impact of what we're doing. Oh, I'll take a picture of the dick and send it to 5 people. I don't have to think of the consequences. But you flip it round. Generally, boys are quite easy going about this sort of thing. You flip it round, girls, they generally get a lot more hate as a result of it. Again, a headline from a UK newspaper, if you're aware of the Daily Mail, it's basically the newspaper that tells British people what to hate in society. Generally, migrants, people who are left-wing, Jeremy Corbyn, those sorts of things. But this was based on a piece of work I did back in 2012, where the report specifically said, not everyone's doing this, however they are aware that this sort of thing goes on. And as a result of that report, which was written to the NSPCC, the headline is, Sex Text Epidemic, Everyone's Doing It. And as a result of that, you get a knee-jerk reaction from society. And parents will then go to their children and go, I hope you're not doing this. And they go, oh no, I can't tell them about it. Or the number of times I've spoken to young people about it, and they go, well, there's no way I'd tell my dad about this. Well, why not? Because he'd go and kill him. You know, if they talk about, oh, someone said, can you send me a nude? Would you ever tell your dad if someone said that to you? No, you couldn't. Go, why? Why? Or worse, oh, he'd tell me off. Well, why would he tell you off? You've done nothing wrong. Someone has sent you a message saying, send me a nude. Why is that your fault? Parents, they don't understand these things. The one comment I get more than anything else from young people about talking about, I don't want to be judged. Because a lot of the time they're not inviting this sort of thing. You can't. I like to talk about a girl who's blocked 30 people in her year because she keeps on getting dick pics on. In what way is that her fault? But she did feel guilty talking about that scenario. And taking a number of quotes from recent discussions, things really haven't changed. You know, boys will ask for pictures, boys will objectify women, boys will say things like, oh, I'll go into a relationship with you if you send me an image first. If you love me, you send me an image. All of these sorts of things are all forms of coercion. And girls are experiencing this. And I don't like to stereotype gender because there are different behaviours on each part. But if we're talking about normative behaviours, girls will generally be more likely to be victims of abuse as a result of these things. Boys are more likely to be the offender in these sorts of situations. And if you look at some boys' comments here, you can see that there's already the underlying coercive, almost in some cases illegal behaviour, well, definitely in some cases illegal behaviours, but they see it as normal behaviours. I've got an image of you, don't mess with me, otherwise that image goes around the school. If you read the work of someone like Jessica Ringrose, who's done a lot of work in this schools as well, she'll have spoken to people who go, if you don't give me a blowjob, I'm going to send that image around the school. You know, those sorts of things. It becomes very coercive behaviour. But it's almost like it's not recognised as coercive or illegal behaviour, it's just recognised as, we have a term amongst teenagers in the UK, banter or bans. It's just banter, it's what you do. Interestingly, the UK Council for Child Internet Safety released guidance on sexting to schools a while ago. Now, I wouldn't like to comment too strongly about the UK Council for Child Internet Safety, but frankly they're useless. But the comment was the thing that really got me quite annoyed was the advice is don't involve anyone else if obviously it was done as a joke. So you have probably a male who's got an image of a female in a sexually explicit pose or something more extreme, who's then sent it around to his mates, and then the head teacher challenges him on this behaviour and he goes, oh, I only did it for a laugh, I only did it for a joke. They go and look up the official guidance, it's done as a joke, right, we won't take it any further. I would like to see far more involvement with the wider stakeholder group, but I would like to see that involvement done in a far more pragmatic way. Because if you have these behaviours ingrained in teenage life when they move forward, they can become extremely problematic. One of the longer term implications that myself and Maggie have talked about a great deal, is whether this does lead to greater tolerance for child sexual exploitation materials. If your formative sexual experiences at the age of 12 or 13 are looking at indecent photographs of your peers, does that place behaviours inside you that then, when you get older, you still find those formative sexual experiences pleasurable? Now, I've had these conversations with boys in particular. You say, well, would you keep these images? Well, yeah. But what happens when you're 18? What do you mean when you're 18? Well, then you're an adult in possession of these images of a minor. Yeah, but they're your friends, aren't they? So you've got this evidence, certainly, I wouldn't call it empirical evidence, but certainly anecdotal evidence that there are these behaviours emerging, which leads into far more problematic scenarios if you are talking about someone in their first job, someone at university who's got a collection of images of friends from school on their laptop or on their phone. That becomes a far more serious case than just peer-on-peer. Now, looking at UK Ministry of Justice data on this, where we asked the question, how many prosecutions have there been of juveniles or young adult offenders, so this is anyone under the age of 21, for possession of indecent images of children, there is a clear sign that these are increasing. But that requires far more research to do. But just to finish off, looking at this as a problem now, what we need to do is stop young people sexting. So we go, right, kids, sexting is bad, and it's illegal, and you might get arrested, so don't do it, okay? I'm sure all of us, as horny 14-year-olds, would go, yeah, I'm not going to do that then. It's fine. Teacher said don't do it. So, really what we're looking at here is a manifestation of a willingness to be popular, or to have a laugh, or to go out with someone, to be told you're attractive. One of the really interesting, I was talking to a teacher about this a while ago. She said one of the really clear things she sees between boys and girls when they self-generate, or they talk about self-generating, boys will happily snap away and send whatever to they want. Girls will plan it for days in advance. They might even go out of their way to buy new underwear, because this is a really important thing to them. And then the image gets sent and they go around the school and they're crushed in the result. One of the things that I find really amusing in the UK is because we've called for compulsory relationships education for a long time in the UK, and every time there's a call to a recommendation from a politician, the press, like the Sun and the Mail, come out and go, oh look, they want to teach 7-year-olds how to have sex. I don't think that's the case at all, but you can talk to 7-year-olds about privacy, you can talk to 7-year-olds about people having respect for you. And how if someone does ask you to do something you're uncomfortable with, that's not very respectful, is it? And if you can start to build resilience from an early age, I'm pretty sure, because I do have conversations with my daughter about this quite a lot, if someone was to send her a message saying, send me an image, she'd reply with, bugger off, or my dad's coming around, which would be my preferred choice. But that's because we've been talking about this for a long time. I've been working in this area for as long as my children have been alive. So we probably have different conversations with a lot of people. But we don't talk about it in terms of sexting. We don't talk about it. We talk about it in terms of respect and consent and those sorts of things. Consent is such a fundamental thing. Did you consent to that? The number of young people that will tell me, oh, well, we heard about someone sent so-and-so an image and then they sent around lots of other people. Oh, do you think he did that to upset them? No. Well, why else would they take an indecent image of one of their peers, maybe their girlfriend, and send it to other people? Oh, it's just something you do. There's not enough reflection on what consent is and what boundaries are and what consent is. And there are no safe spaces to explore stuff around coercion or exploitation or legality or whatever. The number of times I'm asked a question about what's the legal position here, and my normal response to a teenager is, well, it's complicated. And yes, by the letter of the law, but that law was created in 1978 and then refined in 2003. And in 1978, when someone said it is illegal to take an indecent photograph of a child and send it to someone, they never expected for a second the person taking that photograph was the person sending that photograph. So it starts to become far, far more complicated. And just to finish off with, the need for relevant education from an early age. A comment from a year 12 male, a comment from a 16-year-old boy. You know, I've spoken to everyone and they've never had sex education like this. And what I hear from children of that age is it's too late for us. We need to start earlier and earlier. Christ.